What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Couple Things Interviews.
With Sean and Andrew.
Today, we have a wonderful couple, Rebecca St. James and her husband, Cubbie.
Cubbie Fink is a founding member of the multi-platinum Grammy-nominated indie pop band Foster the People.
Wow,
How about
casual.
that for some bona fides?
And his wife,
Rebecca St. James, is also a Grammy and Dove award-winning Christian music legend with more than 2 million albums sold.
jeez.
She's also an accomplished actress and the author of more than a dozen books.
And they are here because they just published another book, Lasting Ever, Faith, Music, Family, and Being Found by True Love.
We had a really fun conversation. If you want to find out more about what they're up to, we'll link their information down below as well as information on the book. Hope you enjoy this one with Rebecca St. James and Cubbie Fink.
I've got a
Appreciate
question
that.
super fast for you.
Okay. hit us.
How is the social media thing like at that level? Like that's a lot. Like how do you keep it from dominating your life? Because you've got a lot of followers and does it feel like a constant battle to kind of keep it from invading your privacy or?
I'll let you go first.
I think it did.
Yeah.
But we have figured out a system that works really well to where it almost doesn't feel like it's even there anymore.
Good.
Like our
Good for
team
you
is
guys.
so wonderful
Yes.
that it actually feels way less invasive than it ever did before.
Yeah. That's great.
I'm actually curious to get y'all's perspective on this because I am just continually grateful for Sean's experience. She started being in the limelight at age like 12.
Yes.
And so the way she's conditioned to
Yeah.
fame, I think it's so much different than like the TikTok stars that blow up overnight and all of a sudden you're like, sweet, I made it, and like all the weird things that can happen.
And they're freaking out probably
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
it or making bad decisions. Or,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. And they
Uh-huh.
don't have people around. They haven't figured out the system of what does it look like to navigate this healthily.
Yeah.
Because it can be overwhelming and disorienting. I remember, you guys know the Holcombs? We had the pleasure of talking with them, and he said something that's really stuck with me, that the human heart is not meant for fame.
You
And
said
it's
the
like-
same
You
thing. He
said,
says,
oh,
like,
dude, I freaking love
pretty
it.
much verbatim the same
I
thing.
love that. And I
Yeah.
think it's so accurate. And so it's like, all right, so how can I love what we do. So in some ways I want it to consume our life because I'm like, dude, I love it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure like you guys do feel about your work where you're like, oh my gosh, this really feels meaningful and like an application of the skills I've been given.
Yes.
But how do I create a buffer between
Yes.
myself and like the whatever the reaction is by the populace, you know? So, but I don't know. Yeah. Caroline and Lexi and everyone you just met have been pivotal. And then Sean's wisdom in navigating has been crucial as well. So
How long have you been married?
9 years? 8 years?
thanks for
8
coming to
years?
interview us, Rebecca.
Sorry.
This is really good.
Sorry.
But you've dealt with this your whole life, it seems, no?
Yeah. Since 13. I mean, similar
Yeah.
age. I went on my first tour at 13.
So how do you?
So yeah, I mean, that does help. There's trauma around that too. Like,
For
where
sure.
you're just like, and I mean, for me, I feel like it was always trying to live up to these expectations, that were on me from really young. So there's stuff that you have to process based on that. But I think it helps you stay grounded when you've done it since that young, because it's kind of like you're not being shocked by the crazy as it just kind of maybe increases later in life. Or
I think also seeing a lot of it as a kid helped. Because like you're not quite old enough to experience all of it and understand it, but you get to witness all of it. And
it's
I
just
just
your normal a little bit.
Yeah, and I got to witness the good and bad of it.
Yeah.
I got to see how people handled it really well,
Yes.
and how people handled it very poorly, and who people who are consumed by it, and it just kind of made it easier now that we're older to say, oh, I've actually seen where this can go for the good or bad, and I want to make sure we don't ever end up in the bad.
It's good.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So you
it's
learn
helped.
from other people.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's smart. How old are you guys now?
33.
Both of you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
She just had her birthday this week.
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
Thanks.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been married?
14. in
Amazing.
April.
Amazing.
How's it going?
Good. Yeah, it's going great. It's kind of cool to never know.
Getting pretty serious, I think.
Yeah. As you have your 3 babies next door. Yeah.
Guess you
I
could
am-
say.
I am curious. Congratulations, by the way, on the book you just wrote. Just
Yeah.
came out, and very excited. How was that process though? Because we're about to enter that journey, and I need tips. I need wisdom. Share it all, please.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
It's a lot. It's a massive undertaking. And are you going kind of memoir style, or what's the approach of your guys' book?
Yes. It's
Memoir with a topic focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think the interesting thing that I learned through the process is it's rare that you're forced to focus on your life to the degree that you have to in order to write a book. And it's something that I found incredibly therapeutic, cathartic, and really healing in ways. And it was just a beautiful process. And it's something I've really been encouraging people, getting over the hump of actually finishing the book, going back now and encouraging people, just pause and look back on your life. There's so much there that you probably missed, and especially missing the hand of God. I think it's very easy to miss God in the work, working in your situations, especially in the hard times. We can miss God's hand, but getting a bit of perspective and getting beyond it and be able to look back, it's beautiful to see the way that he is just so intimately involved in every granular detail of your life. And we just saw so many points of things that we missed before, so many points of God just orchestrating things so beautifully, and points connecting that we never saw connecting before, and even the ways that he was growing and maturing her and preparing her for me and vice versa. And so all that to say, just get ready to dig up a lot and bring things to the surface that probably haven't been brought to the surface in a long time. But also just be aware of God in the midst of it, and what he's trying to show you just through the beautiful stories that he's written on your lives. And it's funny getting all of the words out on the page. It's almost like I can't even take credit for those stories. It's just so clearly God and his handwriting all over every page.
What led you guys to write a book?
It was actually a friend of ours. So we had a movie come out last year through Lionsgate about my family story called Unsung Hero. And it was a producer on that film that, around the time that we were getting ready to release it, I suppose. That was
about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. He just said, I feel like you have a story that needs to be heard right now, that like people are needing encouragement in their faith and in marriage and family life and just all these things. And you have a story that could really help encourage people. And so it kind of ignited something in us that I think we'd been feeling since we were probably early married. Like at some point, way down the track, we'll write a book. But I think it brought things up, to like now, to where we just felt a sense of like mission and timeliness around it. And, a lot of people are deconstructing their faith, or like, really questioning, does this faith thing, work for me? Or they're discouraged because people have let them down, and maybe Christians, And so we hope that the book, like that people kind of close the book and go, God is good. And I've seen that in their story. And we hope that people feel like they like sat down and had a coffee with us. Like it's just real like that. And that it's applicable to where they're at in their season.
I feel just tickled that we actually get to sit down and almost have a cup of coffee with you.
Thank you.
It's like artistic royalty here in so many ways.
Thank you.
The book is called Lasting Ever: Faith, Music, Family, and Being Found by True Love. What's behind the title there? Lasting Ever. What is that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it really tied into kind of this whole like happily ever after thing that I think we all long for, of just happiness in life and marriage. And then kind of just going, well, we are promised in the Bible that in this world you will have trouble. Like we know that that's a given. Like we know that it's going to be challenging and there's going to be pain. But then to kind of go, God is faithful and he will restore and he will redeem those challenging moments. And so how do we live out a lasting ever, or everlasting? It was kind of a creative play on everlasting. That kind of everlasting love, receive it from God. So that's like being found by true love is really like this whole idea of being found by God's true love, and then having that play out in the way we do relationships. So we're committed and we stick it out in the hard times, because there will be hard times, in our family life, in our marriage, in our faith. And hopefully this book just encourages people to to courageously stand firm in those hard times.
Yeah. And I think the happily ever after kind of alludes to a nice, neat package with a bow on top. But I think the playing on the everlasting it's more of a commitment to truly endure. I think it's a matter of enduring and what endurance produces in the midst of the life that we lead together and in our family, and really just a commitment to last through the hard times, but enjoy the good times.
I do have a question. When you do a photo shoot for the book cover, what percentage more time do you spend on your hair for something like that? I feel like it's a lot more pressure. It's like it's
the
perfect.
cover is incredible.
It is.
And the color scheme, I love it.
Oh, thank you. I'm very impressed with you guys.
Thank
We
you.
really love design, and we love, he especially loves photography, being a director. And so yes, your aesthetic, this looks like kind of our house with the black and the wood.
Thank
Did
you.
you shoot this? Did you do the photo shoot for that?
No.
Oh, okay. I was about to say.
That would have been impressive if you were able to do that behind the camera.
Setting a timer and running back and forth.
Yeah.
The hair is impressive regardless. I love I'm trying to think, is there a different mechanism through which to realize God's goodness and faithfulness other than that reflection that I think happens in different forms, whether it be prayer or something like an event like writing a book? Because it is like when you endure through whatever season life has to offer and you make it to the other side and then you look back, like that, it's just a really amazing way to kind of construct to view the breadcrumbs where you're like, oh man, I didn't see it when I was in the forest, but now I can step back and see really everything that patched together. I'm just trying, because faith is an interesting thing that like I see that cultural Christianity actually is on the rise and it's like really amazing. I'm pumped about it, but like dissecting some of the derivative effects of like, wow, when you're able to sit back and reflect and then like see the goodness that life has brought you, whether it be like a euphoric good time being on stage or being on the podium, or the goodness that comes through the difficult times too. It's like, what other way is there to appreciate that? You know, I'm not sure. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is interesting because I think we're able to value things far more after we're through them. I think we can take in as much as we can in the moment. And I think there is a call to find contentment in the moment. And I think that's really a verse that has guided a lot of my life, is when Paul says, I've found a way to be content in all things. Because I think it's easy to look to the next thing that will bring us quote unquote contentment. But I think a lot of it is striving for this just fleeting happiness. But I think contentment is really found in the present, because we're not anxious about the future and we're not just depressed about the past. It's being content with who we are in the here and now and what God is providing us in the midst of the high times and the not so high times, and just being okay with being in the presence of God and having that be enough. And I think contentment speaks more. It's beyond just joy and happiness. It's a true just sense of peace and rootedness and being okay in the here and now.
Well said.
I think that we can also see like these full circle moments in community, because I just find like some of the biggest like aha moments that I have are like having a conversation with a friend, you know, over a coffee or whatever, and or in our small group, and you're just kind of talking about your life and you're just kind of reflecting on it, or somebody's asking a question and you just kind of sit back in those like communal moments, and you just go, oh yeah, like I see God's hand in that, or that's kind of coming full circle. Like I think that's why we need community. I think when we island ourselves off and we're just, you know, trying to keep up these appearances that everything's fine and we're doing great and, you know, all of it, I think there's a loneliness in that and there's a lack in that. Whereas if we're in community with other people that share our same hearts and are asking questions, and there's this free flow of kind of ideas and like talking about your life freely, like it's almost like we start kind of hearing God's faithfulness in our story more. So I just think there's a high value on community to reflect, and you don't have to have a book, or you don't have to be this expert at journaling every day to like see the hand of God, I think, if you're in community.
Yeah.
Andrew and I have talked about this a lot, but the reason why we started this show was I got really frustrated at looking at culture and looking at society and seeing this like trend of people saying if things get hard, especially within marriage, it must not be the right fit.
Right.
So leave and quit.
Right.
And then I also feel like in culture today, in regards to anything, whether it's a new job or whatever category across the spectrum, if things get challenging, it must not be the right fit.
Right.
Which is kind of countercultural to what you're writing in the book.
Yes.
And I think the question I'm like trying to get at is for someone who's a skeptic to faith and to God and to something greater, you want them to read your book and walk away and say God is good. But how can you convince someone that the hardship they're enduring is actually potentially a blessing on the other side and not just the world serving them up a bad hand?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we can convince anybody of anything really. I mean, we don't have that power, you know. But I think all we can do is seek to share authentically and go, man, we have had some tough stuff happen. His mother was dying slowly for years and then just recently died. In our winter season, what we call our kind of most painful time of our lives, I miscarried twice. So it's like a loss of, dreams and just my body failing me seemingly, or he lost a job unjustly out of the blue, and there was betrayal of friends in that. And, it was just like thing after thing after thing hitting us. And I think in that time we probably could have gone, life just is, stinks right now. Like it just really is awful. And I don't, I don't see how we're ever going to come out of this pit. Like, but I think what we felt challenged to do, and I think helped us not only get through it, but then get to the other side of it too, like what we consider our spring, was going, God, this is really hard actually to like believe that you're going to redeem this somehow, like miscarriage, or just the things that we're walking through are really, really hard to navigate and hard to feel hopeful even about. Like how does something good come out of that loss, But on the other side of it, like we see that in that winter time, there was stuff happening below the surface in our hearts that was good. Like we were crying together and just going, I don't even have many authentic, encouraging words to tell you right now, but we're in it together. And like we are seeking to trust that God is good and he can somehow get us through this. And then, we get to this time where the spring did start, and like an internal spring came to us, and it was actually through worship. It was like through like a event that I was part of, and I'm like singing to God, and I like spring came to my heart. I know it. And it was happening at the same time, completely separate from me to him. And then we had a second child and a third child, and all this vocational stuff has come. And now we can kind of go like, we can comfort out of the comfort that we were receiving from God in that time. So all that to say, like, we can't convince any listener of anything other than this is true of our experience. Like we authentically experienced God being there for us, and we have seen the redemption. And now we can kind of encourage other people that are in their own winter that spring does come.
And I think there's something that can be agreed upon, whether you have a faith perspective or not, is that we only grow through the hard stuff. It would be nice to believe that when life is good and we're living on the fat of the calf that we're going to be growing and maturing, but the reality is we don't. It's just far too easy to get complacent and just think that you're not forced to grow when things are easy, but it's through the hard times, it's through the pain, it's through the challenges that we do grow, we mature, we have to overcome to get to the other side. So because of that, with a faith perspective, you can see God at work through the challenging times, growing us and maturing us, and ultimately creating us into the beings that he designed us to be through the hard stuff. And it's funny, if we had the power to just create a little human, which, just for the sake of an analogy, and you wanted to instill patience in that little being, you wouldn't give them whatever they want whenever they ask for it. You would make them wait. and that would be hard for that child to receive. So
Yeah.
instilling patience in that being is withholding. That's hard for that being, but that's instilling a virtue in them that will only benefit them. So it's when we're experiencing things that might feel unjust or hurt or don't make sense, it's what are we learning through that process that's going to benefit us in the future. And with a God perspective, it's all the more beautiful because it's him at work in all of that. It's him providing purpose in the pain. Pain is something that we run from at all costs in this culture, but it's embracing the pain because there's purpose in it.
On that note, I had the experience of writing a eulogy, and it was really, there was a moment that hit me where I realized that all these stories I was telling about my father they could be seen in so many different lenses. And it's like what the stories that I choose to share in this eulogy and how I talk about them matters, because it kind of cements that in your mind.
Yeah.
And I wonder, as you're making the movies or doing the books, how do you think about positioning those stories in a way that like psychologically locks those stories in? Because just like the child who feels the pain of you withholding something, it's like, man, if they told that story right now, that would be coming from one place of like, yeah, you wouldn't believe what my dad did and he hurt me. But then give it a few years or give it a little space, and that story would look totally different. Like, oh my gosh, my dad really loved me so much that he taught me this lesson. So that just whatever effect that is of like, how am I telling this story? Am I the victim here? Am I the hero? Or, did you guys confront that at all with this?
You're hitting on something that I just think has only recently struck me about how powerful that is, like our perspective. We were talking to somebody recently on a I think it was a podcast actually, and they were saying that there's been this like research that's been done, and how you talk about your marriage can definitively say whether your marriage will last or not. And so if you're kind of saying, yeah, we've been through some hard times, but we like see good in it and we're closer on the other side of it, or like, yeah, we should have got married, so we did get married, and like, it's the way that you tell your story and your love relationship literally speaks of how, if it'll last or not. And I thought that was so fascinating because really perspective is just about everything. You think of people that lived through the Holocaust, like people that survived that and then went on to, write books about it or like live a thriving life. They had a perspective of hope, or that there's some kind of purpose in the pain, and they got through it to the other side and were able to bless other people, with their story or their book because of their perspective. So I think there's something there that is huge, and hopefully people hear a hopeful perspective here. And it's not all just like challenges. There's a lot of humor in there. There's a lot of like, when we met and like, it was so magical. It was like a Hallmark movie. Like there was just so many really sweet, amazing moments out. He's playing at the Grammys with the Beach Boys, and like, we're traveling the world together. There was some really like fun, cool, and sometimes very funny parts in the book. But the real stuff too, I think, has so much value, and it's how we're thinking about it that I think impacts the peace and the joy of our life. So I love that you're speaking to that.
Yeah.
Well, I also think I love the humor. I love reading books that have humor in them, for sure. But I do think it is the hard stuff that people relate to and like hold on to so much.
Good.
Hearing your story about infertility, I hate that you're a part of that group. We are a part of it as well, and I wish nobody to ever go through that. But the amount you have spoke about community, the amount of like people that came into our lives, and how big our community grew because of that, was just a testament to like the perspective you have. And I'm curious, within your marriage, was that a hard season for you guys getting through that, and how did that affect you as a couple, and how did you manage to get through that season to have second and third, and first, second, and third? But
Yes, it was hard.
Did you know that electrolyte deficiencies can cause headaches, cramps, fatigue, brain fog, and weakness? It took me forever to find this out the hard way, and now I drink electrolytes literally every single day.
I do too, and it makes a huge difference. Sean and I drink Element electrolyte drinks because each of their stick packs delivers electrolytes that are free of sugar, artificial colors, or other dodgy ingredients. Element is formulated for anyone on a mission to restore their health through hydration and is perfectly suited for busy parents, people who are fasting like I did a few days ago, or those following specific diet plans. So pretty much basically anybody.
Literally anyone. Element was also the hydration partner for Team USA's weightlifting team and many Olympic athletes in Paris this year, which I thought was pretty awesome. Everyone from Olympic athletes and professional sports teams to Navy SEALs and neuroscientists all stand behind Element electrolytes, so you can trust they're the best.
Get your free Element sample pack with any purchase at drinkelementtea.com/EastFam. Also try the new Element Sparkling, which is a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water.
That's Andrew's favorite.
Try Element today, totally risk-free. If you don't like it, they'll refund your order, no questions asked.
Yeah, I mean, it like Rebecca alluded to, it was just one of those seasons that everywhere we looked, it was just, it felt like the world was caving in on us and just felt underneath feet of snow, hundreds of feet of snow, and it just felt like there was no way out of it. And Rebecca often speaks about, you know, she was struck at her feminine core because her body was failing her. Like she's not able to do the thing she was created to do. I was struck at my most masculine core because suddenly I found myself in job loss and not knowing how I was going to provide for my wife and brand new baby. And then that's, you know, only compounded by my mom dying and all these other things. And so there was definitely, the challenge was finding the strength to be enough for each other because we both felt like the weak ones. Neither of us was the strong one to kind of lift the other one through the hard time. And so I think there was a lot of just focusing on what we knew despite our circumstances not being in alignment with that. We still knew God was good, even though we were experiencing a lot of pain, and just trying to put one step in front of the other. And I think the other massive component for me in that season was in admission that I needed help. And I think there's, you know, the culture will say, especially as men, just tough it out and bear the emotions and just be the macho man. But I think admitting that I needed help because of the way I saw myself responding to my wife in ways that were unkind and unjust, really was proof to me that there was stuff beyond the external circumstances, stuff internally that needed to be dealt with. And I used the analogy in the book of if I were to reach out and touch Rebecca's arm gently, she would probably just say, yes, you're touching my arm. But if she had a gaping wound on her arm and I touched her in the same way, she would have a visceral reaction and probably yell something and jump back. And I started noticing the way that I was responding to things that should have been fairly benign in very visceral ways, which was proof there was something buried beneath that needed to be uprooted and dealt with, which was the beginning of saying, okay, I need to find somebody that can help me with this. I found a counselor, and then that led to another counselor that ultimately helped me walk through this journey of just uncovering some pretty dark and painful trauma from my childhood that ultimately was able to kind of uncover, but not only uncover, but experience the healing of Jesus Christ in the midst of that, and just see really my life turned upside down and profoundly came out on the other side, just so much more healed and whole and able to be what I would hope to be a much better husband and to my wife and father to my children. So really the hard season spurred on that journey. And it's an ongoing journey. It's not over, but yeah, so trusting on what we knew to be good, despite, it's like relying on the last word that you heard from God, even in the midst of silence or hardship. And then also not getting in the way of your own healing. Because I think we can be sent to a shame place and also a fear place of like being fearful of pressing into the hard. So standing on what you know to be true, and then also having the courage to step out and push into the hard.
Yeah. What is it about males and emotions? I know that's like, because I can't wrap my mind around them either, but like,
yeah,
it's such a mostly accurate stereotype of like, man, I don't know how to. Sean's like, how you feeling today? I'm like, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know the words of what emotions are. But how has that been for you? Because it seems like you've done some work there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's funny because I don't know how much of it's taught, how much of it's innate, how much of it is learned, but I distinctly remember the day that I decided crying was stupid. I was probably 5 or 6 years old. I was in my room. I don't remember what spurred on the tears, but I remember like kind of finishing up my cry session. I'm like, that was stupid. I'm never going to cry again. And I kind of decided from that moment forward, I'm done crying. So that was the beginning of bearing a lot of emotion. And then I grew up in a family that didn't talk about emotions, and a lot of things were swept under the rug. And so I never developed any kind of an emotional vocabulary, which I was able to start that process in college. I ended up kind of finding a mentor. He was one of my professors and really helped me with a lot. But one of the biggest things he helped me with was how to put words around the things that I'm feeling, and kind of taught me that vocabulary, which allowed me to, ultimately help me in this relationship first and foremost. But that's only deepened the kind of the further I've gone into the areas that had previously been just the avoidance areas, the places I didn't want to go to. So it takes intentionality for sure. I mean, especially for guys, because I don't think it comes naturally to us. But it's something I would absolutely encourage other dudes to do, because it's, especially for guys that are wanting to have any kind of a semblance of a healthy relationship with a woman. It's kind of important.
It is so hard though. And I'm curious how you've navigated the patience of that process. Sean's been very patient with me, but like the balance between being emotionally tuned in and like very aware of that versus being emotionally resilient, which I think is also good. And it's like, because this emotional resilience turns into burying things and like glazing over things and not thinking about it. And sometimes I feel like the emotional attunement or like being in tune in that way, you can be, I don't know, is overly sensitive a thing? Is that possible? Maybe not.
Probably
like,
for us women.
But like,
yeah.
but like, how do you balance those two? Because like, all right, well, I need to acknowledge this at some point, but I also need to understand that like, okay, I don't know, I have a family that leans on me or something,
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something about husbands and wives. I think it's why we put together, like why God made us that way, because it's almost like, I think we draw out our men, right? Like when we're, I talk about it in the book, but like, I think there's a sixth love language, and it's curiosity, where you just ask the people that you love, you ask them questions, and or people that you've just met, you can also ask them questions to learn from them. But I just think it's a love language that we offer in relationship is drawing each other out. And I think a lot of girls, like, we like to talk and we like to communicate and connect in that way. And so it's easier for us. But then I think there's a balance. I think we draw out our men. And then I think that we probably at some point as females, we can be real sensitive. I know I have been and probably am. But I think I've had to learn some emotional resilience too of like early in marriage, it's like, we need to knock out this conflict that we're having. It's 3 a.m. and we're completely exhausted, but we've just got to not let the sun go down on our anger. Like we've just got to talk about it, get to the other side.
Been down for hours.
Yeah.
And he's falling asleep, and I'm like more upset. This is early in marriage, to then this place of like going, you know what? He's in his process, and I've just got to kind of let him think it through and let him have some time, and we'll talk about it at a different point when we're less sleepy.
Taking notes.
You may take notes on that? Yeah.
It's a process. It's 100% a process.
I'm the hasha. Like I got to get it out.
Yeah. I like to
We're
get it out
working
too.
on that.
Yeah.
We're working on that.
You mentioned a winter season, a spring season. Do y'all have a fall and summer season of life or no?
I don't know. Maybe those are like coming.
I feel like the summer was probably the blissful years. I mean, I think summer represents bliss for both of us growing up near the water, and
I'm Australian, yeah.
we like the sunshine. And so, yeah, I think we didn't label it in the book, but probably the blissful years is probably the summer.
It's early. Our first few years of marriage were like pretty amazing. He
Yeah.
was traveling with foster people, and we traveled together a lot and traveled the world, and got to really experience some pretty amazing things together. So I think that was probably a summer, and I think there'll be more of all of it, right? Like there'll be other summers, and I think we're in a kind of a little fresh spring right now. Like,
Totally.
but you kind of come in and out of these different seasons in life, and it's talk about resilience. I think it's kind of learning how to roll with that a bit and not be thrown by it, and stay steady in all the different seasons.
I love how you just said that. We have had a lot of conversations with friends of ours who are desperate to be married and are still searching for their person. But it's funny how you ask them what they're looking for, and they have this idea in their mind of, I want my life to look exactly like this. Or I want a life, like I see in my friends. And the way you said you have to have the resilience to be able to go through those ups and downs. I think a lot of people today who are searching for their person fail to acknowledge that there is a roller coaster you ride, and it's probably more low than high, and the highs are fun, but the lows are part of it.
Yeah.
But nobody sees that or wants to experience that to get to the highs anymore. They just want the bliss of it, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think it ties back. I find that the narrative conversation really fascinating. Kind of want to revisit it because, like, it's not the purpose of faith, but I think it's a beautiful side effect of faith, where it really is the best, most optimistic, ambitious, positive narrative you can embrace, where it's like it's withstands the test of time. Okay, it's like been around for thousands of years. Again, not the purpose of it's not the purpose to have all these fancy feel good narratives, but like you think about, okay, if I want to be a contributing citizen that uses my skills well, and I'm like contributing to a community, what's the best way to do that? Well, let's talk about humility. Let's talk about sacrifice. Let's talk about
character, integrity.
Yeah. And it's like it's all baked into the whole faith thing. So whatever. I just find it like for the people that are faith skeptical, it's like there are a lot of positive derivatives to it.
100%.
Anyway, I
loves that perspective.
Yeah.
You're right on.
Yeah. Speaking of perspective, we're in a phase of parenting where narratives are important too. We have a 5, 3, and 1 year old, and there's a lot going on with the kids, a lot going on with us. You have a podcast, Practice Makes Parents.
Yeah.
What have you learned in that process of documenting the whole thing?
Dude, so much. I love it. Like, I'm sure you guys relate to this, where it's just there's certain things that you do that you're like, I get to do this. Like there's just joy in it because you just feel like it's so congruent with your season. And that's how I feel about this podcast, because it's like we are in the thick of it with our 3 and wanting all the wisdom. And so I get to do this parenting podcast with the head of parenting at Focus on the Family. So they've got like decades behind them of like wisdom when it comes to parenting. My co-host is like a doctorate in like counseling.
Wow.
So it's like expert, and then we get to interview other experts. So I'm learning all these like things about like, if you want to, just kind of ride the, wave with your child and just like kind of maintain relationship, then about 4 hugs a day is a good idea. If you want to really up your game, like 6 hugs a day. If you want to really like grow super much closer to your child and feel much more connected and them to you, 8 hugs a day. Like
with
all
the
these
kid,
kind
really?
of like,
Is that a thing?
like,
8 hugs a day?
Well, and the wild thing is, I mean, and I'd never heard this before, and maybe for different kids, like some kids are going to be more into that, the hugs, and maybe your female kids might be more into it than your son needs it. I don't know. But I've noticed it with our oldest, who's like preteen. I'm intentionally hugging her more. it's almost like I'm just sewing into her little personhood, and I'm seeing her flower in this new way, and some walls come down. It's like working. So I'm getting all these like little tips that.
And what was the challenge? The challenge to let the child let go first.
Yes.
Oh,
Have you heard
man.
that?
We've done it, and it
Yeah.
was wild.
How
I mean,
long
they'll
they
just
hold on
stay
to
there
you.
Forever.
It's so amazing.
Makes me want to cry.
I
Yeah.
know.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Hold it together.
No, there's a moment I had with my son where I was like, Shauna just told me about this. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to try it out. And we just stood there for like 3 minutes.
It's
I was like,
amazing,
this
right?
is magic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah.
Or like another idea that I kind of got was having this like jar of marbles, and every time you find your child doing something good, you put a marble in there, and then when they get to a certain amount of marbles, you do something special with them one-on-one. And it could be a walk, or it could be playing Legos, but it's something, you know, that's special for that child, and they're like seeing the good choices that they're making, and you're affirming them instead of just kind of correcting all the time. I mean, it's been so helpful for me. Like I just feel like I'm being poured into with these like tips and tricks and nuggets when it comes to parenting, and it's really helpful.
I'm like, what else do you have? Like, okay, we're doing these two for sure.
The
8 hugs a day and
well,
marbles.
Yeah, well, and this kindness, based on, again, some of the things that I'm learning from these experts, I started this like kindness board where if the kids, you know, are kind to each other, because I feel like breaking up fights with amongst your children is just a thing at this age. It's like, come on, guys, just be nice. How hard is it? But when you find them doing something kind, you like, that was great, and you're going to get a tick on the board for, you know, being kind, and you might have some taken away too if you're not so kind. Yeah. But just noticing it and affirming it, and there's going to be a good kind of result that comes from us seeing this pattern of kindness. I've noticed such a change in the kids. So anyway, I love it. I love this podcast.
And now you have like an in-house parenting coach, right?
That's right.
So
Yep. She's the at-home expert.
No, definitely not expert. Work in progress for sure.
Something else that you guys speak so well on, and you speak on it a lot, is actually purity, which we have had so many conversations about, and trying to figure out the way to explain it to kids, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you feel you will address it when the day comes, or if the day has
We
already
are.
come,
The day
which is
has
amazing.
come.
Okay. We have a 5-year-old. We should get on this. And yeah, tell me how you approach the conversation and the meaning behind it for you guys.
Well, I mean, you know, we have 2 girls, so I've probably spearheaded it with our oldest, you know, who's just about 11. So, I mean, they say really, you can start having the conversations or reading like age appropriate books, like by like 5 and 8. There's these books that are very simple. They're not showing too much. It's like, it's, you know, but it's just kind of educating them on healthy sexuality.
Yeah.
Very age appropriate. But then, so starting the conversation, I think, is actually younger than what you think. And it not being this one and done thing. I think in generations past, it's like, oh, we've got to get that talk over at a certain point and then we're good. Or we'll just kind of let school handle it. And I think both are not really, with the research that's been done now, neither is a good idea.
Agreed.
Don't let school handle it. Parents handle it first, so that they're getting really that very caring, very intentional approach, very nurturing approach. And then it's a series of conversations. But my daughter and I just started a series of like kind of mother-daughter dates to intentionally talk about like self-image and friends and identity and sexuality. And so we've just started, and we're doing this little program that Focus on the Family puts out called Launch into the Teen Years, and it's amazing. So we've just done one, but I love it, and it's bonding us in a really cool way. It's kind of starting these like little conversations, and got a little video that you watch together, and then you've got journaling and, you know, a series of questions, but it's deepening our mother-daughter relationship in a really cool way. And so instead of being like, this is like something I have to dread, it's actually been something that I've enjoyed. And we even dressed up. We got our nails done. We went out to eat, and we talked about some of this stuff, and it was like celebration of womanhood. It was really fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I feel like it's drastically different than generations above us, because it was always this taboo. You don't speak about it. It's just the way it is. If you ever cross any lines, it's shame on you.
Right.
And to see how much it's evolved is really encouraging as
Yeah.
parents,
Yes.
because it can be daunting at times.
Yes. I think for every parent it is,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't have to be.
I think it's something that's uniquely Christian that I think it's twisted sometimes.
Yeah.
And the Christians, I think, get wrong. I know several Christian couples that like the healthy sexuality there's no sexuality because it's all just bundled in shame and like, oh, I was always told this is a bad thing.
Right.
So I don't want anything to do with it. And we're married, you know?
Oh,
So it's
no.
like, it is really, but obviously there's a fine line of like, okay, how do we talk about this in a way that you're comfortable with and there's no shame attached without overdoing it? I guess it's
Yes.
another fine line to navigate, but
Yeah.
I don't know how y'all do it.
You have to send us all the resources.
Yeah.
Okay. Will do.
Yeah. Are you a part of those conversations at all with the daughter?
I mean, not
Not as much
not
yet,
as much,
but you
yeah,
will be.
But will
I
be.
think.
And yeah.
And probably, and definitely with our son, I think he'll be spearheading that one. But I think even as she gets older, like speaking even into clothing and stuff, you have spoken into that.
That's definitely
Like just clothing choices, like what are you saying? And not to be legalistic. Like we're not trying
and
to
I think
encourage
and I
that.
think the ways I have interjected is, from a guy's perspective, you were showing, this part of your shoulder, and that's communicating something to a guy, and just making her aware of, obviously she just wants to look fancy and cute and all the things, but what she's putting on is communicating something to everyone around her and just helping her understand it from that perspective. And again, not from a legalistic standpoint. It's like, we've got these hard, fast rules, and if you break them, then you're in trouble. It's more, and I think that's where, even the purity movement, there was so much good in it because it was upholding a beautiful virtue. It's what God has called us to do. But unfortunately, upholding virtues can get intertwined with legalism, and then things go awry. And my hope would be that God, or that people wouldn't blame God for man's shortcomings, because we have a tendency to screw things up all the time. People get angry at the church and they blame God, but the problem is church is just run by imperfect people. So my hope is that people would be able to delineate that. It wasn't God that created this legalism. God had provided something that is best for us and best for our families and best for our marriages. And he asks us to honor it for our good. It's not like he's trying to lord anything over us. He's asking us to do something that's only for our benefit. But when that beautiful virtue tries to get enforced by imperfect people, it obviously has very negative fallout, which I understand. And I hurt for your friends that are bound up in shame because of the way that they were taught things. So I think it is trying to enforce things in a way that communicates the love behind the idea and not the legalism to enforce and to cause shame.
And I think the intent behind it too, when we talk to our daughter about like clothing, like, there's a lot of clothing today that is many versions of adult clothing. It's like showing your midriff, or it's really like high skirts, or lots of leg, with these super high shorts or things like that. But it's kind of helping her to go beyond just these rules, like Cubbie was saying. It's like, it's not about the rules, it's about the intent. Like, are you trying to, get this attention from a boy that is really looking at your clothes and your body and going, she's sexy, and you're 10 years old? Like, is this what you really want? Or are you really wanting to go, I really want to be honoring to God in every part of my body, and I want to dress like that I'm respecting my body. And so I know some of this stuff is like hard to talk about it, but it's the kind of things that we do need to be talking about as parents, because what we believe about this, about what's right or wrong, to do sexually before marriage, or what we believe about modesty and, the way we dress, is going to impact our kids, and they will be influenced by how we talk to them about these things. So I think, we talk about it in the book, like how our experience with purity was great. Like, it was protective, it was good, and it wasn't legalistic. But other people have had an experience that was, but what are we passing on to the next generation? Like, what are the values that we are going to stand by when it comes to what we pass on to our kids? So we have to sort through it. We have to figure out what we believe and how we want to direct them, I suppose. But it's hard. It's not easy.
It is. It's a lot of conversations that come, like you said, so much earlier than you think.
Yeah.
Yep.
The things that we get asked even by our 3-year-old, sometimes I'm like, wow. I don't know. We got to think about this one. Let me come back to you.
My default is I need to talk to Daddy about it.
Yeah.
And it buys me some time.
We've had many questions already in so many different categories of life and areas, not even about this, but where you're just like, I didn't know your brain could even comprehend these topics and thoughts already.
Yeah.
So it's challenging, but it's fun to keep up with it and try to honor their curiosity and give them answers that are really thought out and intentional and not just like, oh, I don't know.
And sometimes we need a minute to figure out what we do think about it, right?
Yes. Yes.
And maybe get some counsel on it too.
Yes.
Chat with some other people. Or other
I would say
friends.
you guys just came from one of our favorite counsels, Sissy. She is just a genius with words
Sissy
and
Goff, David
kids.
Thomas,
So
Raising
good.
Boys and Girls.
My
I mean, they have
goodness.
so many resources, so many great books.
I've always said I'm calling you with every question I ever have
Totally.
because the way she processes everything, I'm just like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's so good.
The emotion wheel. I remember that
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I am curious. Your kids are here,
Yes.
and it seems like that's common for you to bring them with you. What's the philosophy or intention behind that? Because I like it.
Thank you. I grew up in a family that we did stuff together like that. We did ministry together. And so I think I saw it modeled and we homeschooled that, so that allowed kind of that flexibility. And there was something about doing it together that helped us to navigate even some of those challenging years, I think, when we had just moved to the U.S. and then we're moving into ministry and we were out on the road a lot. And the togetherness helped. And I think for me, I just don't ever want our kids to go, wow, mom and daddy were gone and they were helping everyone else or they were encouraging everyone else, but they weren't present to us. And I never want that to happen. Like, I think I will quit just about everything if they say that. But right now, especially our oldest just says, I'm so thankful that you do music, Mom. And I think she's seeing the adventure and the joy of it. And while ever it's that, I think we will do it this way. And for me, it makes the whole thing of music new and fresh, like doing it with them. Like, it's joy, and we get to travel and have these new experiences. We're going to New York, in about 10 days to do some media there, and Good Morning America and Fox and Friends, and like we'll go as a family, and we'll probably go see a show. But it allows us, I think, it's comforting for me, and it's kind of grounding for me in a special way. But I also think they're learning and they're growing through the adventure of it and the togetherness of it too, and we're growing in our relationships.
That's really cool.
That's fun.
Yeah. And I think, for both of us, we have a mutual belief and understanding that our first ministry is here between her and I. We can't be good parents if we're off. Our next ministry is our children. We can't be good ministers of anything else if our relationship with our children is not healthy. So everything kind of stems from that. And I think, we made a commitment early on in marriage when I was heavily touring. I was gone 300 plus days a year, and it would have been very easy for us to go months without seeing each other because I was just gone that much. But we made a commitment really kind of from moment one that we weren't going to go longer than 2 weeks without seeing each other. And I think laying that foundation in our marriage, just making sure that we were prioritizing. And even when it was hard, when we'd have to fly and meet each other on a day off from two other opposite sides of the world just to make sure we weren't going beyond that 2 weeks. It really kind of set the standard for the way we wanted to operate as a family, and continuing to defer to this being our first priority and first ministry. And now that children are part of our world, it just kind of gets enveloped into that same mindset and wanting all of the other things that we do, ministry and elsewise, to stem from the health that we try and maintain in the home.
That's great. I'm curious, is there anything left on the creative bingo for you guys? You got the music, you got movies, books. What else? Sculptures, maybe, in the future?
Interpretive
Abstract
dance.
art.
Yeah, you've done it all. You've done it all. Great job. It's an honor to meet you all.
Great.
Thank you for joining us. For those listening, they want to check out what Rebecca and Cubbie are up to, including a link to their book, Lasting Ever. We'll include that in the show notes, but this was a real treat. So thank you.
Thank you. We've
guys.
enjoyed
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.